If you're adopting a new puppy, one of the first things that you're going to need to do is to set up your wellness checks for your puppy with your local vet. Now, after doing your research and choosing which vet you're going to be working with, you're going to need to take a couple of things into consideration that you probably will not think of and your vet probably will not tell you when you're making that appointment. So let's break this down to make sure you are making the most of your time and efforts going to these wellness checks. Now, most vets do, in fact, do 2 puppy wellness checks, one when you first get them and one a few weeks later just to double check on things, but there are a couple things you can do beforehand. Now, these are things that I have encountered for the adoption of my 2 new puppies. You know, I recently lost my senior dogs and I've adopted new puppies, but it's been a while, and so I didn't remember all these things from my first 2 dogs. So let me just break down what I have learned that would be more helpful to you and would have been helpful to me, but I've also spoken with my vet about this to see what other people are forgetting or not thinking of when they come to their vet visits as well. The first thing that my vet stressed was that you need to have a plan in place for how you're going to be training your puppy. When you go to your vet, you're going to need to have a conversation with them on how you're going to be raising this dog. And that doesn't mean you have to have everything figured out, but you have to have a pretty good plan in place for how you're going to house train, how you are going to manage their food, how you're going to do your training, how you're going to work on behavior issues. Have those in mind because that is part of the conversation that you're going to have with your pet. And a lot of people don't come with a plan in place. They just adopt their puppy and think they'll figure it out as they go. So even before you adopt your puppy, these are things you should be thinking of. And my vet has highly stressed you should be thinking about that before you are adopting this puppy. But you need to come with a plan of action, at least a minimal plan of action and some guidelines for what you're going to be doing when you come to have that conversation with your vet. Now, the next thing that you need to be thinking of is your records. So many people show up without their puppy records. These will come from your breeders, from the shelter you're adopting from, or wherever you're getting those puppies from. You'll have paperwork that comes with it. Puppies are required to go to vet visits. They are supposed to have seen that vet before you become their person. So during those first 8 weeks of life, they have already visited the vet, and you're going to need those paperwork things to go with it. So you need to understand that you're taking that paperwork with you. Now, if they're coming from another vet and you need to transfer it, if your puppy's maybe a little bit older, you're going to have that in mind. Now, for most places, you can call ahead and say, hey, listen, I'm transferring from this location to this location. Can you please request the records? So the vet themselves can go and request the records for your puppies. You can call your old vet and have them send it over, or any breeder or shelter should also be able to send those things over. If they're handing you paper documentation that you need to be taking in, have that with you. Have those written documents or have the digital ones sent over. Yes, they can call when you get there, but they've said, my vet has said in multiple cases, people have arrived without their documentation because the other vet did not send it over, or the breeder didn't send it over, whoever it was, didn't send it over in a timely fashion. They had to send them on their way and come back for yet another appointment. You don't want to do that. So make sure that you have that paperwork, all of those records ready to go when it is time for you to go to your vet visit. Have it done in advance. And if you can send digital copies over early, that's going to work to your benefit as well. Now, another one that I found is really important is that you need to be writing down the type of food that you are feeding your dog. When you go into your appointment, the tech will greet you. They will go through all of the paperwork. So they're going to ask you questions about your puppies, the things that you're doing, how you're doing these things. You need to know what type of dog food you're feeding your dog, especially if you are mixing dog foods. So for me, I had 2 puppies I adopted. Each one of them were from different places, and so one came with one type of food, another came with another type of food. When we were starting to run out of the first type of food, we got a third type of food to mix in with it, and then the vet gave us one for the first puppy. They're 5 weeks apart, so they had different vet visits. And so at one point, we had 4 foods we were mixing together. Now, as always, if you are getting a new puppy and you're transitioning them from food to food, you want to mix those together so it doesn't upset their tummies. So you want to make sure you know exactly what type of food you are feeding your dog so that your vet can say, yes, this is good, it has all the nutrients that you need, or maybe this is not the best fit for your puppy, let's try something else. Make sure you know what brand it is. If you need to take a picture of the bag, you can do that. The ingredients on the back of the bag, that's fine. We actually had answered our vet what type of food we were feeding him, and she had not heard of one of the brands. And so we actually looked it up and she checked the ingredients and all was good in it, but she hadn't heard of it. And so being able to look it up is a good thing. Making sure that you know what type of food you're feeding your dog is incredibly important. Now, another thing that I have learned that would have saved me a ton of time and effort was that in your puppy wellness visits, you are going to have, most places will have 2 puppy wellness visits, the first and then the second as a follow-up. you will have to do a fecal sample with your dog to make sure they don't have any parasites or any issues. And I did it on the second visit. What could have happened to save me time and effort was to do it on the first visit. Now, when you go, they're going to give you information on what you need to bring back for the second visit. I did check with my vet, and most vets are going to be like this. You can just straight up bring in that fecal sample. So when they go potty in the morning before you go to your vet appointment, just grab a Walmart bag or a little puppy poop bag, pick it up, and take it with you. You can put it in a Ziploc. You can kind of package it up a little bit if you want to save yourself some of the scent inside of your car, but you're going to want to take it with you. And I highly strongly recommend doing it on your first visit and not your second visit, because if there are any issues, then you have the ability to deal with it faster and also to deal with wherever you got the puppy from in case they have to take care of any of these medical bills. So you want to make sure that you have that with you. That's not something I knew I was going to need to do. In fact, I didn't even know that was something that I could do early. I showed up and they said, okay, we need this. Here is the sample for you. They had a little container, but you don't have to have their container to do it. If you do want their container, it's got like a little shovel scoop in it. Very helpful. If you want that before, just pop into your vet and say, hey, listen, I've got a puppy check coming up. Can I get one of the sample containers? And then you can work with that instead of having to deal with the bags. Whatever works best for you, but make sure you're bringing that in on the first visit because it's going to save you time and effort, and make sure it takes care of your puppy a little bit easier as well. You do need to know that with this, you are going to be doing more than one visit. There are 2 puppy wellness visits for most places, and you're going to have to get their puppy shots in this. And so they're going to space them out a little bit. You can have a conversation with your vet on what's most important, what's age appropriate, etc. But you should also keep in mind, and this is something not a lot of people know, that you will be getting shots on your first visit, on your second visit, and then depending on where you're located and what version they're giving your puppy, you're going to have to get boosters. I have had, I think, 4 different appointments for my puppies. So their puppy wellness, their second wellness, the booster, and then yet another booster because of the way that they have to space it out. So it's 4 separate visits with 4 separate sets of shots. And it might be a little different from you because certain states have certain types of the vaccinations, and it can be more or less depending on a whole bunch of factors. So just be aware you're going to have them during your wellness checks, but also probably some boosters as well. Those are just for puppies. You're not going to need those for the older dogs, but just those initial ones need the little booster. So be mindful of that as you are setting these things up and as you're budgeting for your puppy as well. Now, another thing that is really important that was really helpful for me was a dog carrier. Now, I have 2 English Springer Spaniels. They were tiny. They have grown now, but I had puppy carriers, and this was to help me to transport my puppies as I was driving from the location I was picking them up. It was a very long distance where I was getting them from. I also had them so that I can transport them in the car. They do not sit in them in the car, but I do like to put them on the floors. They can jump in them. They like to hang out sometimes when they don't want to sit on the seat next to me in the back. But these are really good for taking into the vet. You don't want to have to carry your puppy all the time. Now, if you have a small dog, this is a wise choice just to straight up have a carrier to take with you all of the time. You don't want to have that exposed to some of the other elements in the waiting room, etc. But even if you were having a puppy that is going to grow bigger, I do recommend getting a cheap carrier from like Amazon or something. I'll link the one that I used. I love it. It's got the ability to fold back the screens and you can see through the sides and you can zip things up and close things over so they can't see. And just, it's a good carrier. It's a very good carrier. And so I have those for my puppies, and during their initial visits, in fact, all the way up until this point, and one of them they both finished their wellness checks, but one of them has finished all of her booster shots now, and the other is just about to. The little puppy still fits into it. The bigger puppy's kind of tall. I can put her in there if I need to, but she's not going to be super comfortable in it, but I highly recommend getting the cheap one and having it there. You do not have to have your puppy in the carrier, but having it there in case you need to set the puppy down is really helpful. So for the most part, I would sit in the lobby and I would just hold my puppy. I would hold my puppy in the room while we were waiting for the doctor. It wasn't a big deal. But because I have multiple puppies, sometimes I have to take both of them. I could keep one in the carrier if I needed to. If something happened, if there was a situation where it was very crowded, if my puppy was feeling insecure and wanted to have more of like a cave around her, I could put her inside of there. I could put her inside and block off her vision from some of the things. One of my puppies just absolutely loves to snuggle inside of it. She is a cave-dwelling puppy dog. It's the funniest thing. She loves to make her caves. but she would rather sometimes be in that than in my arms. She's not like a touch me, love me puppy. And so this is a really helpful situation, even if it's just for the sole purpose of you need to pay for your appointment and you have to manage all of these things. You can just pop the pup right in, zip it real quick, have it on your shoulder, set it on the floor, set it on the counter, set it on a chair, whatever, as long as you're right next to it. And then you can deal with the stuff that you have to do with after your appointment to make sure everything is paid for and you get all the paperwork and all of the things. It's just really nice to be able to have that container there so that they can function in that. Now, the last thing that I do want to mention to you is that it is very important to bring your own snacks to the appointment if your puppy has a special diet. Now, your vet is going to have snacks there. Good vets will ask you before giving your pet a snack. However, if you have a sensitive tummy, if you only want to train them in one type of treat, if you only want to do whatever, bring it yourself. They will not have a variety. This is not a pick your own biscuit situation. So if you are training them with food as treats or like dog food as treats, if you're training them with a specific type of biscuit or whatever, bring your own. They like to liberally give their puppy treats so that they get comfortable with being around the vet. They associate it with positive things and it distracts them if they're getting shots. My vet handed me a handful of snacks just to feed my puppy while she was getting her shots so she wouldn't notice. And by the way, it worked. But if you have any limitations or if you have any restrictions for your puppy, bring your own treats with you. It's incredibly important to make sure that you are doing that. And then as you're going into the vet, also be aware there will be other people, there will be other animals, there will be small children, there will be things around you. You want to make sure you're taking very good care of your puppy until they have all of their shots. They are a little bit at risk, so you don't want to put them on the floor. You do not want them around the other animals, and you may not want other people to touch them either. You want to take very good protective care of your puppy. So like I said, hold them, put them in the carrier, maybe don't let other things be touching them, don't put them on the floor, etc. But your job is to advocate for your pet because nobody else will. You do not know what is on the floor at a vet's office, so be very careful with that. And if you have questions in advance, ask your vet. You can always call them up and say, hey, listen, I have an appointment. What do I need to know? Do I need to know anything? Do I need to bring anything? Make sure you have your paperwork. Make sure you know what type of food you're feeding them. Make sure you're bringing snacks if necessary. And if you've got questions, go ahead and drop them down below. I am not a vet, but I do have a direct line to my vet, and so I'm happy to ask questions on our behalf to make sure we're getting you guys answers so that you are making the most out of your vet visits and your training with your puppy. Follow along for more as we continue to watch my girls grow. You can see Lucy and Gemma and their sister Ember as they are growing and continuing to thrive in their puppy space, and we're bringing you products and tips and tricks that will help you along your puppy journey as well. We'll see you in the upcoming episodes.